Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, December the 20th. All signs continue to point to a pretty significant pattern change by the end of next week, let's say in about 9 or 10 days or so, that will bring about more winter-like conditions to the eastern and southern states. We'll go through some ensemble runs of both the European model and the GFS model, taking a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern going forward, as well as the 850 millibar temperature anomaly pattern going forward. Then we'll wrap up with a look at the operational version of last night's GFS model run at 0Z. We talk a lot here during these video discussions about ensemble forecasting. Wanted to give a kind of a brief description as to what ensemble forecasting is all about. Well, computer forecast models, as I have written here, are initialized with current weather conditions. That includes both at the surface and in the upper part of the atmosphere. The upper air data continues to this day to be provided in large part by radiation balloons that are launched around the world, generally twice a day. Those radiation sites can be several 100 miles apart, so it's a kind of a inefficient way to get upper air data. Satellite observations, of course, feed in some input data as well. In fact, the vast majority of input data now fed into computer forecast models comes from satellite observations. Now, with an ensemble run of a model, such as the European model or the GFS model, instead of making a single forecast, an ensemble model run includes a set of forecasts that are produced using slightly differing initial conditions. In other words, one ensemble member may have slightly hotter conditions initially, another one may have slightly colder, another one slightly drier, and finally another one slightly wetter. And there can be numerous ensemble members. The European model, as a matter of fact, has as many as 50 ensemble runs in its ensemble forecasting. And the whole idea here is to kind of give the forecaster some confidence in the operational forecast. If the operational forecast from the GFS or the European differs significantly from an ensemble run, that gives you less and less confidence in the predicted outcomes down the road with the operational version. So again, the ensemble forecasting provides the forecaster with a degree of uncertainty, and by looking at the future outcomes on each individual ensemble run, you can kind of get a look at the possible range from a snowstorm to no snow at all, for example. So again, that's kind of the general idea behind ensemble forecasting. Again, we'll take a look now at some ensemble runs by two different models, the European model and the GFS model. And by the way, before we get to the actual forecast maps, if you are interested in some educational videos on a whole range of meteorological topics, go to arcfieldweather.com and click on the Meteorology 101 page, and then just scroll down at all these different videos that I have produced over the years on different topics. And this one, for example, I do have a video on ensemble forecasting right here. So again, you can click on that and get an extended version, an extended video discussion on ensemble forecasting. That's all available at the Meteorology 101 page. Now, let's take a look at the actual forecast maps. Well, we'll start off with the ensemble run of the European model from 0Z. And by the way, these maps are available at tropicaltidbits.com, and the ensemble runs usually have an E in the description right here, and this is the ensemble run of the European model. And we'll see in a moment the GFS ensemble run is GEFS for the ensemble run of the GFS. So this is the ensemble run. We're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies beginning with this morning, Wednesday morning, December 20th, and we'll take a look at how things do change over the next 7 to 10 days or so. Right now we're starting off with very, very high heights or higher pressures than normal up across the North Atlantic region, and some ridging here. This is high pressure ridging shows up on these maps in orange, and the troughs in blue on these particular types of maps. So let's move forward here through the rest of this week. And generally, for this time of the year, when you see high pressure ridging or higher heights than normal, it's generally associated with higher temperatures than normal. And here we go into the end of the week and into the upcoming Christmas weekend. And in fact, we do have high pressure ridging in control. Now notice here by Sunday, it's generally focused or more concentrated over the Hudson Bay region of Canada. Ridging extends all the way into the Great Lakes, the northeastern part of the nation. Here we go into the day on Monday, Christmas Day, ridging in control. Again, kind of centered over the eastern part of Canada, probably slightly warmer than normal conditions on Christmas Day in the Mid-Atlantic region, in the northeast U.S. But as we evolve through next week, changes start to take place. And notice the shift to the west, or what we call a retrograding pattern here, where high pressure ridging was focused over eastern Canada. And then we get to the middle of next week, a week from right now, it's kind of shifting to the west of Hudson Bay, which is right here on the west central part of Canada. Notice also trough starting to show up here over the south central states, and we go towards the end of next week, and here we go by Friday of next week. This is December 29th. This is kind of the overall pattern change that develops by the end of next week. We have high pressure ridging kind of centered over the west central part of Canada, just near or just to the west of Hudson Bay. A trough right here over the eastern part of the nation that really is featured over the southern and eastern states. Another trough out over the Aleutian Islands in the northern Pacific Ocean, and some ridging cutting across the western part of the U.S. Not a bad pattern at all if you like the idea of colder, increased chance for snow in the eastern states. Is it perfect? Not necessarily a perfect pattern, but certainly a more winter-like pattern coming for the southern and eastern states. And the interesting thing is, if we go out farther in time from the 29th, it tends to stick around. So there is some sustainability with this upcoming pattern. It kind of smooths things out here with an ensemble run, because climatology kind of plays more and more of a role as you go farther and farther out in time. So it's not necessarily that the highs and lows become weaker with time. It's just that climatology plays more and more of a role. So you'll see, in fact, kind of a weakening of the highs and lows. We're going all the way out now past 10 days into the first part of the new month and the new year, January 1st. But notice, still, the overall pattern here of troughiness over the southern and eastern states, and that high pressure ridging stays centered over the west central part of Canada. So again, this is all the way out to 2 weeks from right now. Trough stays focused over the southern and eastern U.S. and that upper level ridge over west central Canada. Now, how does this change in the upper air height pattern affect temperatures? Well, let's look at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies going forward, beginning with today. And we have some chilly air in the northeast part of the nation, but up across Canada, well above normal over the next few days. Here we are into the upcoming weekend, and that above normal pattern here kind of shifts to the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic, Northeast by the time we get to Christmas Day, which is Monday. Certainly not a scorching hot kind of a Christmas Day, but it should be at least slightly above normal temperature-wise here in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. Now, we start shifting into the middle and latter part of next week, and we'll see some important changes here by the time we get to next Friday. This is now December 29th. Remember, the upper level ridge starting to set up here over the west central part of Canada, and associated with it, higher than normal temperatures. But look at down here across the southern and eastern states, you're starting to get some colder than normal conditions showing up. Now again, is this a perfect setup for snow? Not necessarily. You'd rather see a little bit colder than normal here. Right now, let's say by the end of next week, Climatologically speaking, average temperatures in Philly could be about 40 degrees, maybe upper 30s in some of those suburbs just to the north and west. So you really want to see air 5 to 10 degrees below normal. So it's a close call here, but it gets us in the ballpark here for the potential for snow in this upcoming pattern. And in fact, it may get a little bit colder as we push to the new year. And here we go all the way out into the new year right here, January 1st. Again, much above normal over Canada where that high pressure ridging is way above normal. A lot of chilly air across the southern states and eastern states, and it tends to stick around here going into that the first week of January here, all the way out to January 3rd. This is about 2 weeks from right now. A lot of chilly air here. Even normal air this time of the year is quite cold in the mid-Atlantic region, but this is the overall pattern all the way out 2 weeks from right now. Well, I talked about how an ensemble run can give the forecaster more or less confidence in an operational run. Well, another way to look at it is if you compare different computer forecast models. We just looked at the European model. Now let's take a look at the ensemble run of the GFS. And again, there's that E right there showing up. That's telling us the ensemble run of the GFS. And we'll see quite a bit of agreement with the European ensemble run as we move forward here. We're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies. Again, it starts off generally focused over the eastern part of Canada by the time we get to the second half of the upcoming weekend, but it too, on this particular model run, tends to retrograde and sets up shop west of Hudson Bay by the middle of next week, and it pretty much sits out there in terms of its focus area. And here we go all the way into now Sunday, December 31st. Again, pretty similar to the European model run. Trough over the southern and eastern states, high pressure ridging on the west central part of Canada, and another trough over the Aleutian Islands and the northern Pacific. So again, this is a kind of confirmation of the European ensemble run here, with a more winter-like pattern coming up in about 9 or 10 days or so for the southern and eastern U.S. Does it stick around? Well, let's go a little bit farther in time, and the overall answer is yes, it does stick around. This is all the way 2 weeks from right now, January 3rd. Still high pressure ridging over western part of Canada and trough across the east and southern part of the nation. Well, similar pattern with the 850 millibar temperature anomalies with the ensemble run of the GFS as compared with the European model. Let's quickly move through that here, and we have a lot of above normal conditions starting off over Canada and the northern U.S. Here we go into Christmas Eve. Above normal temperatures from Hudson Bay down to the central U.S., down to the east coast, and it stays above normal in the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. on Christmas. This is the Christmas evening forecast map. But as we shift to the end of next week, again with that shift in the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern, we start to see some colder than normal air showing up here by Saturday, December 30th, across the eastern U.S., the southern U.S., with those higher than normal temperatures kind of focused to where the higher heights than normal, west central Canada. And it does indeed stick around here for a while here, going all the way into the new year. Here we go, New Year's Day, below normal across the southern and much of the eastern U.S. with higher temperatures than normal, kind of confined more and more to Canada as we get into the end of December, early part of January. Well, let's wrap up by taking a look at the surface forecast maps from the operational run of the GFS. This is the standard operational run of the GFS, just a single set, a single forecast set of maps here. Going forward, we have high pressure right now in control, really from south central Canada across to the mid-Atlantic region. High pressure will be in control over the next several days here. Basically dry, seasonally cold conditions in the mid-Atlantic region. There's a kind of a weak system that'll impact the eastern Great Lakes by Saturday into Sunday. And can produce some snow or rain up across the northeastern states by the time we get to Christmas Eve, which is Sunday. And here we go into the day on Monday, slightly above normal temperatures. Looks like relatively dry, at least for most of the day, in mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. There is the next system that will start approaching from the south and west, and it certainly remains too warm for snow into the middle part of next week in the mid-Atlantic region. So this system liable to produce some rain, let's say by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. But then, notice here, the cold air starting to charge south and east across the Great Lakes. Again, we talked about these dashed lines representing the thickness levels of the 1,000 millibar or the surface all the way up to the middle part of the atmosphere, 500 millibar level. The lower the thickness, generally the lower the temperature. This is a cold air mass headed south and east by the time we get to next Thursday, December 28th. And this is kind of the beginning of that pattern change to colder conditions for the east and for the south. And with that will come an increasing chance for snow in the east and the south. Here we go. That colder air on this particular model run, the operational version from last night at 0Z, really charges that colder air into the mid-Atlantic region by the end of next week. And it looks like it'll tend to stick around for a while. Here we go all the way into the last day of the month and finally into the first day of the new year, January 1st. Notice this 540 line sticking around here south of D.C., just south of D.C., cuts across the Tennessee Valley. In other words, still some decent cold air, not brutally cold, but decent cold air as we begin the new year. And then we might have to focus in on a storm coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. So certainly signs continue to point to a pattern change that will bring more winter-like conditions to the southern and eastern states by the end of next week, maybe 9-10 days away. And it looks like once that sets up, it'll be rather sustained for a while going into the early part of January. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.